Want to try out the latest plugins for your DAW? I recommend our sponsor Splice's rent-to-own plugin program. You get to try the plugins for 3 days for free, and then you pay a monthly fee until you own the plugin. It's a great way to test things out and see if they're going to work in your workflow. Head over to splice.com/AfroDJMac, and if you use the code AfroDJMac, you'll get a free month of Splice sounds. How's it going, everybody, and welcome to the Music Production Podcast. My name is Brian Funk. I'm your host. I make music as AfroDJMac, and today my guest is Ari Herstand. He's the author of How to Make It in the New Music Business. He's got a lot of experience as a touring musician, singer-songwriter, even a little bit of acting.
Yeah, a little bit, sure.
But he's someone that has a lot of experience in trying to survive out in the music industry.
Yeah.
So how's it going, Ari? Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, it's good to be here. And actor is definitely part of the end of my hyphenated job titles that I have. But yes, I have done some TV roles in the past. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess in this kind of work, you piece together just about everything you can.
Yeah, it's kind of the LA thing out here. It's I kind of fell into it. It wasn't something I was ever pursuing or looking to do, but I have a big fro, and at some point some casting directors and agents were like, we don't have this look here. And because Hollywood's all about the looks, I'm like, all right, I guess I can show up and do a few things here and there. And it's cool. It's fun. I don't do it as much anymore. I kind of got out of that a couple of years ago, but for a little while, yeah, I was doing some TV stuff, and it was good stuff, good times.
I guess you need that full LA experience.
Mm-hmm. Right, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you, personally, just for all the work you do. Your website, Ari's Take, is such an incredible resource for any musician that's trying to advance their career, get it started, and just move along. And in particular, for example, the article on digital distribution is such a helpful resource.
Oh, sure. Thank you very much. Yeah, I spent a lot of time on that. That's been kind of a work in progress over the last, I believe, 4 years or so. I just did a major update to it this past year, I guess about 6 months ago. But yeah, I mean, as the the distribution landscape continues to evolve and change, I try to keep an updated comparison on the site. And I'm in touch with all the companies. So I reviewed, I believe, 16 distributors. And there's so many more out there that I haven't gotten to, and people ask me to add them. And I started with 9, and that was what was on the site for a few years. 9 is some of the biggest, and now I have 16, and it's probably going to grow. But basically, whenever a company releases new features or changes, make any changes to kind of their model or just their terms, I try to keep it updated. So yeah, the article and the chart on the website, I try to keep up to date, and it's been, it's still the #1 hit on the site because people, there's thousands, tens of thousands of people that are reading it every month. So I want to keep it as a solid resource because it's really the only one out there, and so I kind of feel it's kind of my duty to keep that updated and keep it accurate and up to date.
Yeah, it's really a great resource. I know it's very overwhelming the first time you type into Google how to get your music on iTunes,
Yeah.
and it's a great resource to have.
Right.
Yeah, I used it a lot last summer when I was putting out a release. I just was catching back up on some of the different services, and it helped a lot. And
cool.
I think it's a great source for others, and it's getting passed around a lot.
Right on.
And the book is also an incredible resource that I think people are going to love.
Oh, thank you. And you mentioned earlier before we started that you listened to the audiobook. So you know my voice quite well at this point, I would imagine.
Yeah, for sure. I've been watching. I saw your video at the CD Baby conference, which was really cool.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I've had my eye on you for a little while there.
All right. Oh, happy to help. Great.
Yeah.
Great.
And the reading of the book is great too.
Oh, right on. Thank you. So you have
Yeah, I think the tone really comes across very well.
Yeah.
A big part of the book is the tone and the attitude. I'm a high school English teacher, and I really pick up on that. And it's a nice feature.
Oh, cool. Oh, well, shoot. That means a lot coming from a high school English teacher. I had a high school English teacher that was incredibly influential into my writing style. It was my 11th grade English teacher, and she was super hard and very tough. And you know, it was an AP English class. I ended up failing the AP test, not getting the 3, but I learned so much from her class, and it turned me into kind of the writer that I am today. And I've always taken to writing. I wrote for my high school newspaper, was doing concert reviews and stuff like that back then, album reviews, and yeah, so that's nice that you kind of recognize that. That's the thing. I mean, really, what I have kind of evolved into, and as a writer, because you know, initially I never looked at myself as a writer. I've always been a musician. But when I started Ari's Take, I made a very conscious decision that I was just going to write how musicians talk, just write how I talk and how musicians talk. Because the thing that bugged me the most, and one of the main reasons why I started Ari's Take, was because I was reading, there were some advice columns out there, but they were always written by companies looking to gain customers, and they were bland, and they made these sweeping generalizations, and they weren't specific. They didn't know what musicians were actually looking for, because they were never written by musicians. And 2, you had, if like in the rare instances where they provided really good information, you had to read it with a skeptical eye, because you're like, whoa, are they looking to gain me as a customer? Like, what are their real intentions behind this blog post? And so when I, you know, started Ari's Take, I had no real intentions other than just sharing information that I was learning and just kind of spreading the knowledge, because I really believe that we are stronger together, and we're a community of musicians. And I just want to pass along the information. I believe a rising tide lifts all ships. Like, I don't believe in competition in the music industry. Like, there are enough fans and money to go around for everybody. And so my only intentions when I launched Ari's Take was just to share the information that I had learned and continued to learn. And every time I learned something, I would write about it, and in a way that I would want to read it. And so that's I guess where my tone comes from, is that, you know, I write like I talk, and in a way that is you know, oftentimes, like I offer some tough love sometimes, and because some musicians need like to be shaken up a little bit, and I know I've needed to be shaken up at times. But so some of my friends will read something I write that can come across as somewhat aggressive or intense or whatever, and they're like, "All right, this isn't you at all." I'm like, "Well, I am multifaceted." I'm like, you know, I most of my life and how I mostly operate, I'm pretty you know, easygoing and whatever, but if you know, this is something I care passionately about, and so I think my passion comes through sometimes, and sometimes, you know, to make a point, or like just to shake people out of their preconceived concrete ideas that they have a very difficult time altering. I need to make those points, and I need to really say, no. Everything that you've thought about has been wrong, and here's why. Like, you really need to understand that things have shifted, so like snap out of it. And I know that you're reading all of this information by these people who don't know what the fuck they're talking about. Can we say fuck? Is this a podcast?
Yeah, say fuck.
Okay. I should have asked you before we started. But like, all these people that don't know what the fuck they're talking about, and that was the other thing that bugged me a lot. There's a lot of misinformation out there, and there's a lot of people who, you know, had a record deal in like the 90s, and because they can wave around, hey, I got a major label deal in the 90s, you know, they seem to be an authority by everyone who thinks they want a major label record deal, which in reality they don't want the record deal. And then as you know, also a major label deal in the 90s has nothing to do with getting a label deal of any kind in 2018. And so that's the other thing, is just like, you know, there's a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of talking heads that really don't know what they're talking about. And there's just another, like, the biggest thing is that in the new music business, there are so many ways to make a career happen that anybody who says, oh, you have to do this or this is the only way to make it work also doesn't know what they're talking about, because there are so many different ways to make it work. And that was one of the things with the book that I really wanted to highlight, is that I wanted to tell all these stories of people doing it, independent musicians that were making it happen in really innovative, creative ways that not have even existed 5 or 10 years ago, because the industry is evolving and shifting and people are coming up with these incredible, innovative ways to make a career happen in their own way that may work for you, but may not work for me. And so one of the reasons why the book is so extensive is because I wanted to lay out everything that's out there, and then you decide what makes sense for you and what is in line with your goals and your vision, and then what isn't and what doesn't. And then for those areas, like there's artists who, never want to tour, and that's totally cool. You don't have to tour if you don't want to tour. But that will go against a lot of talking heads and other people who you'll hear write about, wow, the only way to make money in music is touring. That's total BS. But if you don't want to tour, you don't have to tour. And so you can just ignore the touring chapters if you want. And there's other ways to make a music career happen.
Yeah, and that's something I really like about it, because you dispel a lot of these myths about making it and getting record deals. And it's like as if we believe once we get the record deal, we've completely made it and we've succeeded.
Right.
And sit back and let the money start rolling in now.
Well, that's the other thing, is the misconception, and what most people don't realize, and why I put it at the beginning of the book, is that 98% of all artists who sign to major record labels, fail. 98% failure rate. Wow. Let that sink in. That's only of the people who sign major record deals. This is not even all the people who want to get a deal. We're talking oh, you got the deal. Congratulations. That's amazing. You signed with a major record label. Most likely, you're going to fail. And it's hard for a lot of people to grasp that. They're like, wait a minute. A major record label should be the answer to all of my problems and dreams and everything. And the reality is that that's not true at all. It's actually, you have a better chance of failing when you sign to a major record deal than you do of succeeding. And that's unfortunately the reality. And failure is really, you can pick yourself up from that failure. But it's not career failure. It's just, there's a lot of little failures. I've had a million little failures in my career, but how major labels define success is by selling a boatload of records, or millions and millions and millions of streams, and basically becoming a superstar. That's how major labels define success, is if you become a superstar and become famous. And so you may reach a really solid level and with a single or an album that they release with you in your own eyes, but then the labels will deem that a failure because you didn't reach the level of Drake, and they're like, well, you're done, sorry, dropped. And then they own all the rights to everything. So maybe that record is doing really, really well. You can't earn on it because they've dropped you. And now you're kind of left at ground zero with no money. You burned through your advance. You're not making any money on this record that's out that's doing really, really well, because now the label owns it. You can't get the rights back to it. So now you're kind of flailing and starting back at ground zero again. And so I think that's just what people don't really think it all the way through. And that was one of the main things that I really wanted to get across, was that, listen, you may think that a record deal may be the answer. And for some people, it might be. I'm not totally anti-record deals. Record deals can help artists at a certain level, and I've seen it help. But you have to understand that that's not the end-all, be-all. When you sign to a record deal, that's just a continuation of your journey. That's not the end. It's honestly a new beginning, and you have to understand how to work within this new reality. But, and the other thing is, which is you're not going to get a record deal until you get your career to a certain level anyways. And so for all the artists who are well, I have this great album or song or EP or anything, and now where's my record deal because I'm amazing, and if only I could get signed, then I could be a star. It's that's not how it works anymore. No one is going to pop in to the Whiskey on Sunset Strip and on a random Wednesday night and see you perform at 8 p.m. You'd be like, oh my gosh, they're a star. Like that's not how it works. Like people, it's all about the data and analytics, and if you actually have a fan base and have an upward trajectory. Like everyone wants to hop on a speeding train, labels included. Labels don't do artist development anymore, and that's a huge misnomer, is that all it matters is talent. That's not it. Like, remember when Atlantic Records signed Bad Baby, the Cash Me Outside girl, the Dr. Phil, the 14-year-old who was like a meme artist? It was like, she doesn't have talent. It's not about because she's so talented they have to sign this 14-year-old.
Yeah.
It's because she had millions and millions of followers because she became a meme after her Dr. Phil appearance. Like, that's the industry we're in right now. And so, like, you need to understand the landscape. And unfortunately, no, this is not the 80s. This is not, where all it is you have to have a lot of talent and a rock star attitude, and boom, you can get signed and go to the top. You need to be smart about your business, get your career to a level where you built a career on your own. That's kind of the irony of it, is that people think you need a record label so you can have a career, but record labels don't want to work with you until you have a career. So that's what my book is looking to help you do, is to create a career on your own. You get it to a certain level, and then when labels are knocking on your door saying, oh, we really want to work with you, then you make the educated decision. Is this right for me, or is this not right for me? Can I continue on as we're going? How great is this right now? Have I built my career? Do I want to, take a gamble and make a major leap to try to, work with a label? Or do I want to maintain my rights and my ownership and the control and continue on this path that may be a little bit slow going, slower than if I were to get, $1 million infused into the project tomorrow. But at least I know that I have full control and I have full ownership.
Yeah, and you do a nice job pointing that out, that the record company is a business and they are investing in you.
Yes.
And they need something that has a proven track record that's going to work for them,
Mm-hmm.
that's going to pay off, and it's going to actually make them some money in the long run.
Absolutely. It's exactly like, that's why, the reason that the labels are still, profitable, they weren't for a little while, but the reason that they are still surviving and they haven't all gone bankrupt is because the 2% of success stories make up for all the 98% of failures.
Right.
And so that's their current business model. That's always been their business model, unfortunately. And these are major labels. We're not talking about indies right now, but unfortunately, that's their business model, is that at least they can get 2% of their artists signed to become superstars, that they don't care about the rest of their artists, because they're just items on their spreadsheet that are expense line items on their spreadsheet. So it's not a big deal to them.
Yeah, and you point out Bruce Springsteen, for instance, and how he started.
Yeah.
How his first two records were not the commercial successes that we would expect from Bruce Springsteen, major name.
Yep.
And he would have been dropped
Right.
in today's landscape.
Absolutely. And that's kind of, unfortunately, the new reality, is that, yes, Springsteen's first two albums flopped. In how you define success with major label, they were not commercial successes. Now, it has nothing to say about the quality of them or anything like that, but they were commercial flops. Columbia at the time in the 70s decided to stick it out with him because they believed in him as an artist, and they're like, well, we're just gonna, he needs to develop a little bit more. And then his third album was Born to Run, #1 commercial success, and that doesn't happen anymore. If your first single or EP or album, if you get that far, but most don't get that far if you don't have successes with your first few singles, then they drop you, because that's the thing. Yes, they're hedging their bets, and it's a business, and they are not in for longevity, unfortunately, anymore. They're in for the quick successes. That's why they signed Bad Baby, and they signed the quick hits. That's why, we're in this fast food society right now, and everybody needs instant validation and verification and instant success. And so, if that's why like you got to do that development on your own and get yourself to that level where you may be on the verge of popping. And if you're in the pop world and you think that you know, can compete with the biggest pop stars in the world, you have to do your own development. Like in the past, yes, labels saw talent and they're like, you know, it's not quite there yet, but we can develop this into something that will be commercially successful. And and they took their time with it and they invested in that and they invested in time and money. They don't do development like that anymore. So, you know, you have to develop your stuff on your own.
And there's a lot of this mythology in our culture. You see it in the movies, these Cinderella stories, where there's the record exec in the club and they hear him on a night where there's no one around and gets signed. Or our shows like American Idol, where they get picked out and selected to be stars.
Right. Well, I think that American Idol and The Voice and Four and all of these singing contest shows have done an incredible disservice to the music industry because they're miseducating the public. And they are convincing all of the parents out there and musicians, but really the parents, saying like, you know, the only way to really make it in this music business is to get discovered or to win a singing contest reality show. And so then parents see this, they're like, well, that's a 1 in a million shot. So those are not good odds for my kid. So I'm not going to support my child in pursuing a career in music because they don't see a clear pathway or vision. And that was the other thing. Like I want parents to read my book. Like I want them to see that it is possible to have a career in the music industry without winning a singing contest show or getting discovered by one of the 3 people in the bar or whatever. It's not about lucky breaks anymore. It's not about winning a singing contest reality show. It's honestly like, you know, they should realize that even if you win or place in the top 10 of this singing contest show, that really doesn't do much for your career as history shows. Excuse me. But, you know, you can have a career and there's in the past, in the old music business, it was really about a starving artist or a superstar. It was feast and famine, and that was it. And it was just like nothing in between. Now we are in the age of middle-class musicians. Like you can be a middle-class musician, you can do what you love and make a solid living as a musician, and live a fine life. And I think that's what's getting lost is because that's not sexy. It's not being written about in Billboard or Rolling Stone or anything, or they're not TV shows about this, or, you know, because that's not sexy. No average person cares to read about how someone is making, you know, $63,000 a year, hustling their music career and having a fine music career, doing what they love. And that's not sexy. So that's not written about. And so that's why another reason why I felt like I needed to write that and tell those stories too, as in like, listen, like you can do what you love. You don't have to be a superstar or famous to do what you love and make a living at it. You just have to understand that it's a different way of operating your career.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point to make because it could discourage people. I mean, some of my favorite artists are not the most technically sound musicians, not the most gifted or talented,
Right.
But there's something about them. They have character, they have personality that's interesting.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, if you're an independent musician like me, it can often be difficult to invest in high quality plugins to take your music to the next level. That's why I recommend our sponsor Splice's rent-to-own program. They allow you to test out plugins for 3 days for free to see if it works for you, and then you pay a monthly fee to use the plugin. You can pause your subscription when you're not using the plugin and then resume it again when you are. Once you've paid off the plan, the plugin is yours to keep forever. Head over to splice.com/AfroDJMac to start renting to own plugins today. One of the things I love that you really talk a lot about is this like myth of the artist that just wants to make art and nothing else, and everything else is selling out or it's cheesy,
Right.
or it's too crafted. And I think this is one of the nice parts of the book where your tone really starts to come through. And it's a major kick in the ass, I think, because we do have this idea of the artist that just works on the one thing, just the art all the time. But there really is another side to this that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, I mean, and that is part of the development phase. And traditionally, yes, artists could just focus on their art and their craft and just performing and songwriting and just do the art. Um, but because early on they got swooped up by managers and labels that could do all of the other stuff and publicists and could develop, the package around the artist and help the artist, create a package that made sense. And a lot of artists are repulsed by marketing ideas and terms or anything that has anything to do with like outside of the art itself, and they think that they're becoming impure if they try to put together a package that can attract an audience. Like, I don't even want to say like that can sell or that is commercially understood. It's not about that. It's about finding your audience and understanding how to communicate who you are as an artist to an audience. And that's the thing. If you take away the selling, the marketing, the packaging, the bio, the photos, the story, all of those components, and just really strip it down to what you're actually doing, all you're doing is communicating your message in an effective way to your audience. And if you frame it like that, I think every musician can get on board with that concept. It's like, oh yeah, I want to communicate my message to my audience. And then some will say, well, I do that through my songs. It's like, yes, you may do that through your songs and through your music, but if you have an incredible song, but you hop on stage let's just go out there. Let's say you hop on stage looking like Weird Al, and you got and you're all goofed out like Weird Al in costume, but your songs are really heartfelt, emotional ballads about a tragedy that you went through. What do you think people are going to walk away from that show talking about? They're not going to talk about how incredible your songs are. They're going to be like, yo, this goofball got up and he was kind of parodying like sad songs because he's in this weird costume and it was really kind of weird. It's jarring. And that I use that as an extreme example, even though, yes, of course, nobody's going to do that. But but I use that as an example because it's the same thing as it's on a spectrum, and you need to package everything in a way that makes sense to an audience. So yes, of course, folk artists are not going to be most likely hopping on stage looking like Weird Al, but it's so much more than just what you look like. It's communicating a cohesive message in everything you do. Okay, so for instance, it is the way that when you put headphones on and listen to the music, how you feel needs to be the same. That feeling needs to be the same feeling as when you go to a show and see you on stage. That feeling should be the same. And that also should be the same when you read your bio or look at your photos or watch your videos or visit your websites or see your Instagram or your Facebook feed, your Twitter. All of that should be in line with how you feel, how a person feels when they listen to your music. That is because you now are communicating an artist's message. And that artist message is really what attracts fans to artists. Fans don't fall in love with artists because of one great song or 3 great songs. They fall in love with artists because of who they are
right.
and what they stand for and what they stand against. And so it's so much more than just the music. And so if you want to be an artist and not just a songwriter behind the scenes or not just some, a freelance guitarist or instrumentalist or producer, if you actually want to be an artist, then you have to understand it's so much more than just the music. And this is coming from an artist. Like, let me remind you, I am an artist. I'm a musician. I'm a songwriter. And so as people are starting to like, wow, be repulsed by that idea, it should all be about the music. It's not all about the music. Like, it's about the story. Like, It's about everything. Yes, the music, of course, obviously, is the number one thing, is the most important aspect and element of it, but it's not just about the music. It's about everything. And so, how are you going to communicate your message? What is the story that you want to tell? We are complex human beings. We have a million different stories. You can't tell a million stories to somebody and expect them to sit for 12 days and read through your entire lifelong biography if they don't know who you are or care about you. You need to start small and communicate a message. And so when somebody dips their toes into your project, be like, I like this song. Let me see who this artist is. They get an understanding of who you are from the get-go, from the top line down. And yes, as they explore deeper and deeper and deeper into the layers of who you are, then they'll get to know more about you. But you need to communicate a cohesive and effective message from the get-go. And so, like, as an example, I use this as because it's easily understood, but it's like the one story, the one thing that people are going to be able to talk about of who you are when they tell their friends to listen to you. Whenever you share a new song or a new artist with your friend, you say something about it. You don't just say like, here, listen to this song. Like, why? Because it's a really good song. All right, maybe some people do that. But like, if you really want to say like, let me tell you about this artist, because you get excited about it. Because like, oh, and this artist did this, and it's this, and this is how they recorded it. This was, there's something everyone talks about when they do. And what you might not realize is that is a thought out thing. Like, everyone talks about the same thing typically, or the same few things. It's like when Bon Iver first came out, everybody knew that his first album was recorded in the northern woods of Wisconsin in a cabin in the wintertime. And when you listen to the album, it sounds like it was recorded in the northern woods of Wisconsin in the wintertime.
Right.
By himself, in seclusion. Like, that's how it sounds. That was the story that was told. His bio wasn't Justin Vernon picked up the guitar at 13 and then he formed this band and then he formed that band and then this band went on to tour these 7 states and then they broke up because of musical differences and then he dated this girl and then he did this and that. No, that's so confusing. If you read the Bon Iver biography at the time and it was all about Justin Vernon, because Bon Iver was just Justin Vernon, and it was about how all the 7 bands that he was in, because he was like, I know his story. Like, I grew up. My music, I was in Minneapolis when he was launching, from Eau Claire, which is only an hour and a half away. And, we were in similar circles. And I know that he was in all these other bands and these rock bands. And they didn't tell that story. It wasn't just the Justin Vernon biography. It was the Bon Iver story. And Bon Iver story was he recorded the album in the northern woods of Wisconsin in the wintertime. And that's what you have to think about. And then when you looked at all the promotional materials around it, the imagery was all wintry, woodsy, just like the album. The bio was minimal. Like, everything was minimal, just like the album sounded and just like the story that was being told. It was all wrapped up into a neat package. And I like using that because no one questions Bon Iver's artistic integrity. Like, that record is like as that For Emma record is like as anti-pop as you could possibly get. The production quality to modern day standards is horrendous, but it doesn't matter because it's communicating an effective message.
I think that's a really nice way to put it, actually. You're communicating your message, because we can very easily get into like things like branding or like image and things that just are like kind of feel gross and icky to the artist.
Right.
And it's like a big turnoff, but it's a better way to look at it.
Well, and that's the thing. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's the disconnect, because record labels, they employ marketers, and they have marketing departments and marketing teams. And marketing teams and the marketers don't typically ever interact with the artists and the musicians, and it gets filtered from through the label, from like the marketing department to everybody else who's working there, to the A&R, who then talks to the artist, and they communicate it in an artist-friendly way. They're not throwing marketing terms at the artist because the artist would be repulsed by that. But again, you don't have a label or a full marketing team and then people that can buffer that to you, or a manager that can buffer the terms in that. So you have to think like all of that. And if you want to communicate your message effectively, you have to think like you have to understand what an audience is looking for. They're looking for a cohesive message. They want to love you. Help them love you. And by helping them love you, it's not just about the music. You need that cohesive story. And they're going to fall for you because of your story. And yes, your music, but it has to be in line with your story. If and that's on the flip side. Like this happens all the time, where somebody falls in love with the song and then they discover who the artist is and like, oh no, now I hate this because I hate this artist. I don't like what this artist stands for. I don't like, who this artist is or what they do, or, they whatever, abuse little puppies. Now I hate the artist. Like, that's the thing. They and I'm never going to listen to that song again. Like, that's easy for people to understand. Like, if you are an artist who people can't stand as a person or as an artist of what you stand for, they're not going to listen to your music. So it's way more than just about the music.
Yeah, I think we've all had that funny experience where you hear maybe a song that you really like, you love it, but then you realize who sings it.
Right.
And it kind of turns you off to it, and you think, ooh, I don't really, it's because you don't resonate with that message, that it doesn't strike you in the right way. And I think today, like, a lot of that stuff is so sensitive, and there's a lot of people. Right now, I'm kind of thinking like Bill Cosby, for instance. Like, that's an extreme, but he really undid his work because it was him.
Cosby or R. Kelly, if we want to go into like the music world, when Spotify removed R. Kelly from all of their playlists after years of it coming out that he was abusing young girls, like that, and that's like not disputed. I mean, that unfortunately that was happening. Is like, yeah, I don't really want to listen to R. Kelly anymore. Like, when it was just this like sexy R&B singer who, and that was the world, and I didn't know much about him, but I kind of just knew what was fed to me through his images and the neatly crafted story of what he sent. I'm like, oh yeah, R. Kelly's music is great. I love this. This is awesome. But now I found out that he abuses young girls. Like, no way. I don't want to listen to him. Like, that's disgusting.
Hard to put that on a party and enjoy it.
Yeah, right. Because like then you're like, oh yeah, because music inspires conversation. You're like, oh yeah, this artist did this and this. Now the only conversation that's going to come from R. Kelly song is coming on is like, oh yeah, he ran a cult for young girls for years. That's disgusting. You're like, I don't want to listen to this song anymore.
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting how, as much as your message can draw people in, if it's off, it can also really push people away from your work.
Well, and the thing is that if you should be confident in your message and what you stand for, and you should openly embrace haters. And you want haters. You want to push people away. Not everyone away, not in the R. Kelly way of pushing people away. I mean, but you want to stand for something that may be it doesn't need to be controversial, but you just need to be, forthright in your convictions. Because if you stand for something that turns people off, it is going to make your loyalists, your fans, that much more loyal. And so like Derek Sivers says, like, proudly stand, for what you believe in, and it will make your fans that much more loyal. I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically it. And yes, that's like, because people are attracted to confidence, and people are attracted to artists who know who they are, and other people, and people are definitely much more loyal to artists who know who they are when they have haters. Because then they can fight it out with the haters and be like, well, they don't get it. They don't understand. Like, I use the example of, and I talk about this in the book, of the Dave Matthews Band.
Right.
Like, the Dave Matthews Band is one of the most revered, but also one of the most hated bands of like the last 20 years. And they're so divisive, and it's so funny. But like, yes, did it make me that much more loyal when they topped all the charts of the worst bands of all time? Absolutely. I'd be like, no, these idiots are completely wrong when these bloggers, these hipster bloggers, are like, Dave Matthews Band's the worst band. And then I'd read all those articles, and they're not talking about the music. They're talking about their fans. They're talking about the culture. They're talking about whatever. But that's the thing, is because unfortunately the Dave Matthews story got away from them. And the Dave Matthews Band's story became about frat boys, drunk frat boys pounding, Coors Light at their concerts and barfing and whatever, and like bullying people. And that is, that also can be a story about it. And so it's like you have to be careful that if you don't write your own story, a story will be written about you if you become big enough. And you have to understand that your story may overshadow you as a band and your music. And so that's the other thing. Like, that's why it's also really important to come up with your story from the beginning and get that on the front end of it, because a story may be written about you. But that's the thing. It's just like, I believe that one of the reasons that the Dave Matthews Band has consistently been so successful through the decades in the touring front is that because they have so many haters, and because they have so many hate, like, you'd think a band with that many haters would not be able to sell tickets, let alone sell out arenas year after year after year after year, being one of the most successful all-time touring bands. But they have that many haters, but their fans are that much more loyal because of the haters, And the Dave Matthews Band it's not like they're apologizing for who they are. They just embrace who they are, and their fans love them for that.
Yeah, and it's a really interesting tribal phenomenon that happens. I mean, people that like Dave Matthews Band, first of all, they don't like Dave Matthews Band. They love Dave Matthews Band. It's much bigger than that. And they don't talk about Dave Matthews Band. They talk about Dave.
Right.
Dave. Like, they know him.
There's their friend. Right.
Yeah, they're his friend. And it's this thing that they've created, and they're in it together, and they're against the haters, and they band together to combat the haters in that way.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. And that, and it happens with a lot of artists. It's starting to happen with this band that I'm into, Wolfpack. And they have this like cult-like following, similar to like what I saw with Dave. But that's the same thing, is like they're also getting a lot of haters, but that's kind of what you want. Like, obviously that makes everyone uncomfortable. And that's like something that I ran into early on in my career, is like when I started to see success, even in just like my local market, I started to get haters, and it really rattled me. Like, nobody wants to be hated. Like, no human wants to be disliked. Like, That's just a human thing. But I got a lot of haters, or some at least. One in particular who was like a journalist, like a writer. But also there were definitely some people who were hating on what I was doing, and it totally rattled me. And I, at the time, wasn't secure enough in who I was, or confident enough in what I was doing, that it just totally rattled me. Whereas, like, I should have doubled down on what I was doing. And instead, I wasted so much energy trying to get the haters to like me, instead of turning my back on the haters and then going and embracing my current fans, and saying, hey, like, let's, we're in this together, and let's, let me keep making the music that you like, and let me, keep coming to the shows, and let's keep doing this together. I would say that's one of the biggest mistakes of my career, is that when I got haters, it rattled me so much that I was shifting the music that I was making, because I was like, well, I got to get the haters to like me. If only they knew. And it's like, no, they're never going to like you. Like, they're never going to like me. That's the thing. It's like, it wasn't about, and that was the other thing I didn't realize. Like, I thought they hated me because, like, they didn't like my music. It had nothing to do with my music. That was the other thing. They hated me for the same reason that they hate the Dave Matthews Band. They hated who they thought my fans were, or what I stood for, or who I was as an artist, who they didn't really understand. Because, again, I didn't have an artist story that I put out there. Like, my story became written for me because I didn't have one to communicate.
Yeah, it gets away from you, I guess. Something you mention a lot in the book is how important it is to do
Yeah.
this from the beginning and have this stuff straight. And I think that it probably would have saved me and bands I know a
Hmm.
lot of trouble if we had the stuff set
Yeah.
early on and we had the visions aligned, because there's nothing worse than like getting involved and finding out that like things aren't really the same between all the different members and that we have different ideas and different
Mm.
directions that we want to go into. Can you talk about that?
That's the thing. I mean, the first thing that I tell every artist and band that they need to do is lay out their goals, write them out, discuss them, because often, and this is also the first thing that every artist manager needs to, the first conversation that every manager needs to have with a new artist that they're thinking of working with is getting on the same page, literally writing out your goals onto a sheet of paper and getting on the same page about that. Because if your goals don't align, you're setting yourself up for disaster. And that's the thing. It's like, every people may think that you're aligned because getting early on when you're just like starting off with a band and you're starting to play shows, you think that everyone has the same intentions, but maybe one of your members is just like doing this for fun and is like starting a family and doesn't really want to tour.
Yeah.
And they like playing their local market, they like making music, and the other members might think like, oh, of course we want to tour. The natural thing is we want to tour. Of course, we're all leading up to go on tour. And so it's going to be a rude awakening when, 2 weeks before the tour starts, this 50-day tour that you booked, the drummer's like, actually, guys, I really can't go on this. I got a family. I can't be away that long. And, that's just like, that's not where you want to be. I mean, so I think aligning your visions is like, that's step one when you start a band. And just discussing like what everybody wants, because if you lay out your goals and you understand what you're working towards, then you can reverse engineer how to get there.
Right.
You reverse engineer how it happens, because if you don't know what you want, you're just going to flail in all directions and try a million different things that aren't going to work because you don't give it the time necessary to make it work. Nothing really works on the first try. I mean, if you really want to do it right. And that's the thing, is a lot of musicians like try all these little things and it's like, well, that doesn't work. It's like, well, it could work if you actually devoted the time necessary to make it work. But the reason that you're not willing to do that is because you don't actually know what you want. And so you may try all these little things because you think it's going to help you, quote unquote, grow your career when you don't even know what that means. And so, you need to set out concrete goals. This is where we see ourselves in 6 months. This is what we want to do. Like specifically, we want to play this venue in 6 months. We want to get songs placed on TV shows. We want to go on a tour in a year to 5 states. We want, concrete goals. What do you want to do? We want to release an EP in 6 months. And then once you put that out, then you're like, oh, okay, so we want to release an EP. Well, okay, clear. That's a goal. Now, how do we do it? Well, Tammy over there, she's got her home recording studio. She can record us. Great. So let's go work with Tammy, and we can. Cool. So now we have to write the songs, I guess. All right, we only have 5 songs. Well, yeah, some of them aren't very good. Let's write some more songs, and then we can pick the best 5 for this EP. And that's like natural progression, and this just seems obvious, but that's the thing. If that's like very clear, we want to record an EP. Okay, we have to create the steps to actually get there to record this EP, and so you have to figure out how to do that. It's the same for anything. You want to get songs placed on TV shows. It doesn't just magically happen. You're like, oh, okay, well, how do we do this? Which TV shows? Any TV show? No, actually, this TV show, they only place jazz music. So, okay, we're not a jazz band, so we can't get on this TV show. So what TV shows could we get on? Now who places music on these TV shows? Oh, these shows work. Who's the music supervisors? How do I get to the music supervisors? Oh, what's a licensing company? Oh, I need to learn what licensing companies. How do I get to licensing? There's all these steps that you take to get to the goal. So, and someone in that example might say, well, I can't, it doesn't work to get songs placed on TV shows because I tried. Like, well, what did you try? Like, what do you mean you tried? Like, maybe you tried one thing. Maybe you tried to send it to one music supervisor that one time and it didn't work. And, but that's the thing. Like, if that's your goal, you'll work at it. You'll try a bunch of different things, and you'll push them through until they work, or until you can understand what's not working about it. You change course a little bit, but you're still working towards that end goal that you've set out. And so instead of just flailing in all directions and trying to grasp at anything that might be quote unquote working, if you have that goal set out, then you know at least what you're working towards.
Yeah, I think it's so important to have those common goals aligned and the understanding between members, because it's so easy to be going along at a certain pace, 2 shows a month, and everyone's happy. But then as things start to pick up, you may quickly find out that maybe the bass player doesn't want to get so involved in this and doesn't want to go on that tour. And has other goals in mind with their life, which there's nothing wrong with, but you have to have that aligned,
right?
Or else you're going to run into some major difficult problems along the road.
Yep, absolutely. And understanding, like, and this is the most uncomfortable conversation that any band can have, but like, are we all equal members of this project? Like, do we all want to own part of this project, or are we just doing this for fun? And you kind of have to understand that from the beginning too. Like, who's going to own this project? Like, is it, if the bass player is like, guys, I'm just cool playing with you for the time being and just kind of being a part of the ride, but like, I don't want the commitment, and if you're going to go on tour, I really can't do that. Be like, okay, no problem. Like, but then you can't own an equal part of this project. So like, let's just lay that out there. Like, if you don't want to commit, like we want to commit, then either we pay you per show and you're just a hired gun now, or you're cool just being along for the ride and we're going to find somebody who is committed, or maybe there's one person who owns the project and everybody else is along for the ride and owns it. So that's not something else to think about. It's really uncomfortable, and I hate it. Everybody hates it. Nobody wants to talk about ownership or anything like that, but it's important to think about because you don't want to have that conversation, which I've seen happen, unfortunately, where the band has to get rid of a member, or a member leaves, and then it's like, well, now what? Does that member is it a clean cut? But that member helped you build up to what you are right now, and so are they entitled to anything? Are they entitled to royalties, residuals? Are they entitled to merch income? They might have, so that should be laid out, and like what happens when a band member leaves, and who owns what part of the project.
Oh yeah, it's so important, and it'll save you so much trouble in the long run if you have the difficult conversation early on before these problems get big, and you don't have people saying, well, I'm the one that books all the shows, I'm the one that did this, and you didn't do that. It gets messy.
For sure. I mean, and have those conversations before you need to.
Absolutely.
That's like, do it early on when you're just kind of playing a few shows or writing music or whatever, and it's low pressure, because it's going to be really tough when you are on tour and in the middle of a tour, and then shit hits the fan, and that's not the time where you need, you want to be having that conversation.
Yeah, stakes are a little too high at that point, right?
Right.
So listen, I know we're getting near the end of our time here, and there's a ton of things I'd love to talk to you about, but one thing I didn't get to really ask you too much about was your music that you make. And I'm really enjoying your music. It's really
Thank
good.
you.
And I wanted to just sort of pick your brain a little bit about like the songwriting process and what you're doing and how you come up with your ideas and all of that kind of fun stuff.
Yeah.
I know you do like a lot of live looping, but there's also like full band stuff. And I just thought it'd be kind of interesting if you could maybe just tell us a little bit about how all that goes for you.
Well, it's interesting that you asked me about it now, because now is a very different way that I work than I did 5 years ago when I was making the last album that I released. I've actually shifted my entire kind of musical direction. I had been a singer-songwriter, kind of this pop rock singer-songwriter for years. Yes, I had a lot of acoustic songs, the singer-songwriter stuff. I did the looping, I did the full band rock thing for years, and I toured on that. I played 600 some shows as that project. Now I'm launching a throwback 1970s funk soul project. So I'm doing Grassroots District. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I heard some of that. Really cool stuff.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we just released one song, but so my process now is totally different than how I used to create music. And the way that I write is very different. And the style of music is so drastically different. Whereas like I used to, writing for me used to be a very solitary act. And I would always kind of go to my writing corner when I needed to understand some emotions and feelings that I was going through. And it was my own form of therapy. It was how I processed things that I was going through. And so a lot of my songs kind of delve into those areas, which, at the time, like was also counterintuitive for an audience and for fans, because I'm in general a very outgoing, happy person, and that's my personality, and I'm an extrovert, and it's just like this is it was counterintuitive when you'd listen to a lot of my really sad songs, and then you'd meet me or you'd see me live and you're like, wait, this doesn't make sense. And that's like what I was talking about before. Yeah. This is stuff that I've had to learn the hard way. So it's like, as people understand, like I've learned all this the hard way. And so, I've changed the way that I write. Instead of writing to process out emotions now and feelings and like going into that dark place to write, or harnessing any of those like deeper, darker emotions into songs as a form of processing them out and as therapy. Now I write songs that I can have fun with, and I now I'm incredibly collaborative. I'm doing a lot more co-writing now. The whole new Grassroots District record was an entire collaborative process with the producer and the other singer, and we were all writing songs together, and it was like much more fun process doing this. And now I have a therapist. Right. So like I can process out my emotions with a therapist instead of through the songs. And so, yeah, so this new record, the Grassroots District record, Together, the first song that's been released, that was the first song that I wrote for the project. And I did write that. That's the only song that I wrote completely on my own. Now the producer and the other people kind of helped hone it a little bit, but all the other songs on the record are co-writes and collaborations. And I would go over to my producer's house and with the other member of the group, or just the two of us or the three of us, and we would write. I mean, we would we'd always have some tequila. We usually smoke a J, and that was kind of how we would write this new record. And it was a very different process from how I would ever kind of wrote before. And so it's a lot more fun. It's uplifting. It's throwback sound, and it's and also just like musically, these are the style is something that I'd never done before. This is like a soul funk kind of style, and so it's a lot of sevens. It's using a lot of 7 chords, which I'd never really worked with before, and those kinds of changes that I wasn't as familiar with. So I had to get those under my fingers and really understand how those worked. And so I had to do a lot of studying and research and listening, and just to understand how to even write these songs or what the chords were that people were using. And so it was a lot of learning other people's songs and working with this co-writer and producer who that was his bread and butter. He kind of, that's his wheelhouse. That's what he knows how to do. And so that was it was nice to have that kind of collaboration too.
Well, one thing that's cool is that it's very clear that you're following your own advice with this project, because when you go to the website, everything's got this
Mm-hmm.
really cool, like disco
Yep.
ball, 70s vibe. Everything looks like a faded
Yep.
photograph from
Yep.
an old magazine. And it's really clear
Right
what
on.
you're going to get when you hear it. And I almost felt like I knew what I
Yeah.
was going to hear before I even pressed the play button, because the image was so well
Cool. Thank you.
constructed.
And that's exactly the idea. And as you know, right, we're very intentional with that, obviously.
Yeah.
And it's kind of everything that I've been learning up until this point, kind of funneled into this project.
Right. Well, it definitely seems like everything in the book is the product of your hard-earned work, mistakes, and troubles. And
Sure.
yeah, I really appreciate you putting that all together and saving some of us a lot of trouble along the way,
Yeah, yeah.
and to learn from you and to learn from your experiences, which are really
Sure,
valuable.
that's the hope, and that's the idea, and I'm continuing that. I'm actually just about to start the second edition, writing the second
Oh,
edition of the
cool.
book, because it has been adopted by so many schools, and so many schools are starting to teach the book. Berklee College of Music is teaching it, and because it's been doing so well, it's it's starting to get. I mean, really, it's gotten out there. And it is on the in the music business category, it's second to only Donald Passman's book that's been out for 25 years. And so
Nice.
the book is up there, and so because people have taken to it, I now feel a duty to update it and keep it regularly current and updated, and make sure it stays current. And so that's why I also kind of try to stay ahead of all the trends. So when I write the book, I know that it is going to be out in print form for 3 years, and it needs to kind of stay relevant and current as the music industry shifts so much. And so that's why I kind of keep my ear to the ground. I'm talking to all the movers and shakers of the industry. A lot of my friends are working in the industry, and it's not anymore just what I've learned, but it's where I see the industry is going. And now I'm talking to so many other innovators in the industry to just kind of see what's happening, and where we're heading as an industry.
Right. Yeah. And I imagine that's a very big undertaking.
Yeah,
And there's a lot of nice quotes at the beginning of chapters from different people in the industry. So it's nice to
yeah,
know we're getting a nice rounded perspective about
right
all of
on.
this industry
Cool.
stuff. So listen, Ari, thank you so much for everything you've done. It's been a
Oh, for
real
sure.
pleasure to have you on the show. I think everything you're doing is going to be really helpful to lots of people. You've taken them through a real nice adventure of your own discovery
Yeah,
and your own challenges, and you're sharing that so generously with everybody. And I think it's really going to help them in their own
for
pursuits.
sure. Right on. Well, yeah, it was nice chatting with you, and hopefully I can, hopefully it can help some musicians out there.
Oh, I'm sure it will.
Right
Cool.
on.
So we'll send everybody to ariherstand.com.
Yeah, that works.
Okay, it's ARIHERSTAND.com. It's a really great resource for everybody. There's also aristake.com. So definitely head on down to that.
Cool. Great. Great.
Yeah, and thanks so much, man.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
And thanks to everyone who's listening. Have a great day, everyone.